Hi, folks, and welcome today to Learning to Lead podcast. What a joy it is to have you join us. This is a podcast where we talk with leaders of all kinds and we discuss relevant, practical leadership subjects that are biblically rooted and grounded. Our interest is to help leaders, aspiring leaders, and current leaders to improve their practices and improve their character as they seek to please Jesus in the way that they lead. Leadership is influence, influencing people towards a goal and an objective. And we do it not just as leadership principles, but we do it as servant leaders with the right heart. So thank you for joining us today. I do pray that you will choose to like and subscribe. That will help us to keep you notified about other podcasts and other programming, but also because it will help us in furthering the future of this podcast. So I'm blessed today and privileged to be able to interview a close friend and also a friend of this program, Brant Lucy, and he is the owner of Brant Lucy Agency, an insurance agency, and we'll talk a little bit more about his business and marketplace experience and what we can learn from that. But first of all, Brant, good to have you on the program today.
It's good to be here. I appreciate it.
We have to give a little disclaimer. That is that we've known each other for pretty close to 30 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now we got that out of the way.
Afraid to count, but yes.
So what that means is I know a lot about you,
right?
Which could be really good or really dangerous.
Or really bad for me, yes.
Listen, Brent, let's go back a little bit in your background. What I want to do today, my interest is to glean some of the important lessons that have been a part of your own personal experience and your embracing a heart to seek God, make Him the Lord of your life. Your Christian life is expanded. Has spanned most of your life growing up and as an adult. And what that usually means is we've learned a lot of lessons. Sometimes it's because of failure, and sometimes it's because of success. But those life lessons can really be translated into other people's context. Mm-hmm. And so I know that the people listening today, there's pastors viewing, there's marketplace people watching, there's some people who just have kind of an interest in leadership, a passing interest. But let's see if we can glean some of those applicable principles that people can take and use in your life. So I'm going to pick up on a certain point in your life, and we may reverse and give some more background to that in a little bit. But you grew up in a Christian home, wonderful Christian parents, and you ended up, when it was time to go to college, you chose Oral Roberts University. And Oral Roberts is a wonderful school, and that obviously is demonstrated. Your attitudes about ORU are pretty strong, given the fact that you've just put 3 children through there in graduate school. So you've made a huge investment in ORU lately. So, but ORU is a very special university. But what motivated you to attend Oral Roberts University, and what were your major and what were your experiences?
Yeah, great question. So I'm second generation believer. My parents came to the Lord before they got married, and then I grew up in the Christian home, as you said. So it was really a joint decision to go there. We'd looked at a lot of colleges. We'd looked at state colleges. We'd looked at some Christian colleges. I knew where I didn't want to go, but it just seemed like the right fit. Obviously, I can look back and say God was leading the process. I was an 18-year-old just trying to figure out, what life looked like. But yeah, so it was a joint decision that I made with my parents, and my dad felt very strongly of that. Felt God spoke to him, and so we took that step of faith. Never been on the campus before. Just showed up. 20-hour drive from Florida. We showed up, and I remember the very first day of that when Dad pulled away from the campus. I'm standing there by myself, knew nobody, and thought, okay, here we go. Here we go. We'll figure this thing out. So, but it was really as a transforming season in my life.
Yeah.
I'd went in with a desire to get a degree in engineering. It seemed to make sense to me because that was I knew what I wasn't good at, but I had a pretty good grasp on math and science. So it seemed like a good fit. I got into it, but my heart really shifted and changed during that time there. got very involved in ministry, served on as a local leader there on campus, over a dorm, and had responsibility in missions and outreach, and just got heavily involved in ministry to the point where I began to feel this tension between this degree that I was going after and completing. I finished with a mechanical engineering degree, and this tug on my own heart toward ministry. And I began to wrestle with big picture thoughts of like, what's the difference between a vocational call to ministry and what's a call that any believer should feel to service, to wanting to make an impact, a call to the local church. And so it really was for me a transformational time of shifting really what I was going to be about beyond that 4 years.
So you found your passions growing for being involved hands-on in ministry.
Yes.
And like you said, you did a lot there on the university level. But when you graduated, did you have some decisions to make?
I did. Yeah, I did. So it's interesting. So that last year was a year of wrestling with God in a very healthy way and processing with peers. I had options to stay there on the campus and serve in some roles there, some ministry roles there. I had applied to Regent University and looked at graduate school. About 30 days before I graduated, the dean of men came to me and said, "Is there any guys that serve under you that may be interested in this youth pastor position down in Mississippi?" And I thought, I don't know, but maybe I'm interested. I mean, I was just wide open to whatever
Wow.
God had. And so I said, well, I may be interested. Long and short, started that process of interviewing, graduated, and left on the way to Florida, stopped into the church, met the staff, met the team. They asked me to come back and preach, and they offered me a position. I remember the discussion, because I have no experience in ministry. I have no training in ministry. Let me say that from a practical standpoint. Everything was engineering, right? I remember one of the last questions they asked me as a staff visited with me and said, "How would you do this? What youth ministry would you build? What would it look like?" And we're asking very specific questions. And I didn't know. And I said, to be honest with you, I don't really know. I said, what I believe is I believe I can find the heart of God for that youth and bring it to them.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt, and they offered me a position. I walked away, and I thought, well, I need to test this call. I need to know that that a vocational call is what God's saying and doing. So I took a huge leap of faith to land again in a place I didn't know anybody. It's a new arena, had no relationships in a little town called Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Yeah. And that was really a left turn, wasn't it? Because when you went into RU, it was, although I'm sure you had questions, but it was engineering, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So at some point, God working your heart, you were experiencing more of the walk of the Spirit and a devotion to Christ.
Yes.
And got some hands-on ministry experience. And then you took that turn towards actually taking a role as a youth pastor in a church.
Yeah, and I grew up in a family that were educators. I grew up in a family that were entrepreneurs. They started businesses. So I didn't grow up in a family that was pastoring or involved in local church other than just volunteering.
Yeah.
So I had no background. So it was a huge step of faith to think, okay, God, I'm going to trust you in this. I don't know where this is going. I don't know what the next steps are. I just know what maybe the next step is.
Yeah. Out of that experience, that early experience, and there are many people who I remember myself, my early ministry responsibilities and titles, trying to figure things out. And what would you say would be one of your primary takeaways from that particular season at Hattiesburg?
Yeah. Begin to discover what ministry was and what it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing that a lot of ministry is like any other role. There's a lot of organizational aspects to it. There's leading people. There's training. There's different aspects that really are transferable in any environment, in any setting that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
There was things that I just had to do because it was important, and things that stretched me that I wasn't necessarily expecting. But I think the early stages was recognizing that a call into ministry wasn't 8 hours of praying every day. It was hands-on, rolling up your sleeves, investing in people's lives, finding out. It was mentoring. It was pouring in. It was showing up at ball games. It was showing up at a hospital when somebody's injured. It was far more. It was less. I want to say this well. The spiritual aspect was very different than I think I'd envisioned it to be.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that, and that they have a little bit of a super spiritual concept of what a call to ministry.
Yeah,
I know many young aspiring pastors have said, "Well," I said, "Well, what are you really looking forward to doing if you pursue ministry?" I said, "Well, just preaching and praying and studying the Bible." And you hate to tell them, but it's like, listen. This is people business, for lack of a better term. Yeah. And yet your personality and your heart lended itself towards being very relational and very connected with people. So did that positive experience and what you learned there, did that lead you to the decision to pursue ministry, and then became a decision to pursue a graduate degree?
Yeah, it very much did. I think there's two things that went on. One is I figured out I loved ministry. Yeah. It just confirmed that. I knew it going in, but it confirmed it. I confirmed the fact that my heart was to position myself where I can make the biggest impact, have the biggest influence in people's lives. And this did nothing but affirm it. At the same time, the church I was serving in wasn't the healthiest church. There was a lot of dysfunction. I had no idea walking in. It looked great from the outside. And so it was the best of times and the worst of times in some respects, right? Yeah. It was, there was a lot of some disunity and some brokenness and leadership and things going on that was interesting to be a part of as a 22-year-old, just trying to learn how to be an effective minister. But those 2 years really, I think, were formative in a sense that really confirmed exactly what you said, confirmed a calling. I recognized that I wanted more training, and I began to pray toward that, and to the point where, and I was committed to being faithful and staying there as long as God had me, but I felt clearly God released me on a specific date, specific month, and so I said, Lord, I'm trusting this is you. I'm going to walk this week down to my senior pastor. I'm going to visit with him. I'm submitted to him. I want to be under authority in this manner, and it happened to be the church was going through a significant transition, and the timing of that was really perfect. And so, I really saw God's hands even through the transition of my time there.
Mm-hmm. And the decision was to pursue more training in ministry. Yep. So obviously that was your direction.
Yes.
Engineering now is way back into your past and in the rearview mirror.
Yes.
And you came and you relocated to Chesapeake, Virginia, and began as a student in the graduate program at Regent University.
Yeah.
So at the same time that you were doing that, you knew that you wanted to have hands-on involvement in ministry, and so you began to be engaged in a local church that had a growing ministry, and so you had both learning from an educational academic standpoint about ministry and theology, and a little bit deeper into biblical studies. But how were you balancing both the educational side as well as you were still doing the hands-on and involved with people in practical ministry?
It's really interesting. I think what happens in transitional seasons or seasons of training is that we get in a mindset that we don't plant. We think it's just for a season, it's just for a time, so we don't plant where we are, which I think there's a lot of misstep there. And so I was determined I wasn't going to do that. I started a degree in theology, but also in business. I wanted a joint degree because I wanted the business side. I wanted the organizational leadership side of things. Right. So I started that, but we got very involved both in a local church, but we were also doing just doing outreach into the community. We'd take Saturday mornings and go door to door, knock on door, pray with people. Just any opportunity that I saw that was a good opportunity to minister, I I was there. Started working a little bit at CBN, on the phone. Just any opportunity I saw to minister, to impact, to begin to serve the community. That's really what I wanted to do.
Wow. And by the way, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention one other really big plus to your time in Mississippi. Okay. And that's the fact that you found a young lady to marry.
The most important reason to go to Mississippi. Yes.
Well, it's the important thing to go there, but then to leave there with her.
Right.
So you picked up a wonderful asset in your lovely wife, who is so special and has been a compliment to you. No question. Let's get back to your time in Chesapeake and Virginia Beach. You're a part of a growing church. What was ministry? And it was more pastoral, right?
Very much,
that aspect was very much, you were on staff at a church. What did you learn about pastoral ministry that surprised you?
And so I graduated, went straight into full-time ministry again as an associate pastor, and very different role. Was serving as a small group pastor, serving as just an associate pastor, had responsibility at one season over young adults and singles, had responsibility over a service that we started, a Saturday night service. So there was a lot of experience, and I loved it all. I think one thing that I appreciated is the diversity of experiences. I loved being a part of the dynamic of what was taking place in small groups, but I also loved the ability to plan and be a part of a large gathering from a leadership standpoint. I loved working with specific ministries as well as families and whole. So I think for me, one of the takeaways was that generational ministry is critical, as well as a blending of generational ministries. Family ministry is important. So it's not just siloing age groups or specific into specific needs, but also bringing the church together. How much generational ministry is critical, how we need spiritual fathers to speak into young people, how much young people need spiritual fathers and mothers. So that generational thing, I think I fought for as much as I could to see that blended. And that was kind of a unique experience I would walk into. We had a lot of missions opportunities. So I was leading teams all over the world on a yearly basis, which was just short-term, week and a half trips. I'd been on missions. I'd been a part of missions. I think to see the transformative work of God that happens when a team goes on a trip for a week, there's something that shifts and changes when they get back that they're just never the same again. That was a huge takeaway.
Yeah.
The role of retreats and people getting away and separating themselves for a weekend, for a week, for a season, to meet with God, seeing different venues where people were taking large steps in their walk with God, significant steps in their life, breaking out of plateaus. I think just having the diversity of experiences for me was incredibly rich.
And it sounds to me like, just to kind of summarize a takeaway, it feels like, and I've observed this in my own relationship with you, is what really inspired you and was kind of your driving force in your formal vocational ministry seasons was seeing people's lives changed and transformed.
Yes.
On a personal, marital, family level. That's what turned you on.
Yes.
Right?
And what still drives me today. Yeah. Very much. Whether that's in a worship service, whether that's in a mentoring session, whether that's a small group, whether that's on a field somewhere, in another country, however God chooses to do that. And I think he uses all of that and much more. That's exactly right.
So I think that's interesting because, as we'll see in just a moment, your context of vocational versus marketplace shifted over time, and but yet really that driving kind of life mission of motivation and life mission of seeing people's lives improved and changed for the glory of God, that really has continued on through no matter what your context has
No
been.
question.
Yeah. So let's talk just a moment, because you did have a season where you were a campus pastor, where you had the responsibility of a local church. And how different was that for you?
Well, when you're a lead pastor role, it's always different, right? There was a coach of a professional team, and he had been hired on as a coach, and he said, if I'm half as good from the sidelines as I am from the stands, then we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to look at a senior role, a lead role, and have lots of opinions. Is a whole nother thing when you walk in that role, stand in those shoes.
Man, it's easy to Monday quarterback what happened at Sunday services, right?
No question. And I think there's a weightiness to the role that's hard to quantify unless you're walking in it.
Yeah.
There's a spiritual weightiness to it. There's a responsibility there. Not in an unhealthy way, but I think in a very healthy way. There's a mantle that you walk in, but there's also grace to do what God's called you to. And so I found myself oftentimes just diving back into that grace, just said, Lord, I'm going to trust you through this process. Again, very rich season, just a plethora of learning experiences along the way, missteps, growth. I think it was super helpful is that we had a strong team around us. That was both had a strong team of elders and leaders there at the local church, but then even more than that, a strong group of pastors that I related to, and that was huge through that process to have a sounding board process, learn together, learn from them. That they were ahead of where I was in my own development and experience. That probably had the biggest impact in terms of my effectiveness.
Hi, pastors, nonprofit leaders, listen up. I've got a quick question for you. Do your financial systems bring you some clarity or possibly confusion, or maybe even headaches? You know, leading a church or a nonprofit is hard enough. I've done it for over 50 years. And the worst thing is to have a financial system that just doesn't work, or maybe it's just confusing to you. It shouldn't be a part of your problem. My friends at Redwood Stewardship can partner with you as a church leader or the leader of a non-for-profit, and they will help you today. They're going to bring you clarity, some structure and confidence to your financial operations. They do things like budgets, reporting, spending systems, strategy even 990s. They help with leaders getting aligned in your organization and keeping your church or your organization healthy. If your organization is growing, changing, or just needs things to run more smoothly, give them a call today. Visit redwoodstewardship.com. That's Redwoods, plural, redwoodstewardship.com. They'll give you less confusion and more clarity for your church or your organization. Check in with them today. Yeah. Obviously, there's so many lessons that you gleaned in those seasons and years of local church leadership and ministry. You came to a certain point, Brent, where there was a shift, and I happened to have walked with you and observed you and your wife Kelly go through a season of questioning God. Is this the best fit for us? Is this where we really need to be at this stage of our life? What was that like? And there are people who are watching today who are like, I'm there now, or I've been there before and can relate to it. Talk about the heart-wringing experience of trying to find God's wisdom and guidance and placement for your life, and what that decision-making process was about.
Yeah. You and I know, because we walk through this, there's a lot of reasons why people leave.
Yes.
Whether it's a full-time ministry role, frankly, it could be the same thing in a marketplace executive role, or part of that's burnout. It's a big part of it. Part of it is isolation and loneliness in roles. Part of it can be financial. Conflict plays a huge role, right, in people transitioning.
Burnout.
Yep. And conflict in a local church is often people related, leadership related. In a marketplace, it could be management styles, it could be culture issues. So those translate over all of it. For me, it really wasn't heavily any of that. I think it was just that season of I felt like I'd plateaued. Felt like the church had plateaued. I felt like I'd begin to question. I think you said it well. The fit, was this the right fit for me in this season? And I went probably through a 2-year wrestling with that. I think, we know why people leave statistically, positions. I think the other side of the coin is, why do people stay beyond when they should? And I think if I'm guilty of anything, it may have been hanging on too long in a role. I think certainly people do it because of fear, right? Fear of the unknown, fear of how am I going to take care of my family or myself? There's all the financial stuff and but there's also almost what I would call there's a perseverance trap, maybe is a way to say that, where you feel like I just need to put my head down. Not every season's easy, right? And we're called to not give up. We're called not to quit. We're called, so we just want to kind of continue, just put your head down and push through to the other side of something. And I where perseverance is an important ingredient to success, it also can be a trap if we're not careful with.
Yeah, if you're persevering without following God's voice, because you just might be running the wrong race.
Yes, and you just keep pressing because there I think there is a what I almost call a loyalty trap too that I found myself in. I felt responsible for the church, and so the idea of stepping aside from that, I felt a level of guilt with that I wrestle with. I felt maybe a sense of failure with that. I didn't accomplish everything that I had intended, I felt in my heart to do, wanted to. And so there's a lot of internal wrestling that I went through over that 2 years. It really came down to it's interesting. We had gone through this for a couple of years, and then Kelly and me, my wife and I sat down with you and Carrie over dinner, and I remember that moment in our living room very well when you begin to press into this, and I just felt.
Do I do
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Just one of those unique moments I just felt a release
to face up to it,
to say, you know what, it is okay. Yeah. It's okay for me to take a step back. It's okay. Matter of knows okay. It's probably healthy. Anytime I prioritize people over God, even in the right heart, meaning the loyalty to people and to service more than following the direction of God. And I think for me, it was difficult to distinguish what was God and what was me. And so I think that moment for me, I can't even tell you what our conversation was other than you beginning to press on that. So I really felt a grace of God, and we did that. You know what? It's okay. And it's good. It's healthy. Permission. I gave myself permission. Yeah.
So you did step away from a pastoral role, and I don't know at that particular point necessarily that you knew it was stepping away from vocational ministry. It was just the season here in this role is done.
Yes.
Right? Over the next year or two, did you struggle? I know you were kind of seeking for fresh direction of what to do. Did you struggle with the sense of failure that you had to deal with? I mean, that's quite common.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely felt everything from, did I finish the race, that particular assignment, did I complete that assignment, to did I transition well?
Yeah.
How could I, you second guessed everything. How could I have done that differently? Where was the missteps? What, should I brought more counsel in. So you just kind of wrestle through all of that on the back end of it. And yeah, I think there's a number of things that I could have done differently or better. But.
And would you say, well, I think that's true with all of us, right?
Sure,
Our failures are a mix. It's always a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Has obviously time and even finding a new fit and niche in marketplace ministry and the success that has followed that has clearly softened the feel of failure, right?
Yeah, sure.
But it can prolong. And I know there are a lot of people who they struggle with that sense of failure with whatever decision's been made, whether it's career, jobs, assignments, or other personal things in life. So the fact that you got through that is no small accomplishment. Yeah. So Brent, you continuing your story, you went through a couple of years of trying to find what's right, and is there another ministry assignment, and just kind of scanning the world for where that might be. But then you made some decisions to shift towards a business direction. As you said, you had a little bit of business already in your makeup because of not only growing up in a family of business leaders, entrepreneurs, albeit very strong believers, but you also minored in business, and so you had that under your belt. So now you've got all the ministry experience. You've got a degree at Regent University in ministry-related things. So, how did business open? How did the door of business opportunity open up to you?
Yeah. So the unique thing is I don't know. I'll speak for myself. I want the full picture. I want to know the 10-year plan, the 20-year plan. God, what are you doing? What are you taking this? And I have found that God often opens and illuminates the next step.
Yeah.
He doesn't do the next 10 steps. He just, what's the next step? And the next step for me was being in a consulting role at an HR firm, and that seemed to be where God was breathing and blessing. Walking through that door opened the door to what I'm doing now, because it opened up insurance and benefits, and it just opened up a new arena for me that I would have not sought after. I wouldn't have pursued necessarily. It just, God kind of ordered that next step. I've always had a love for the marketplace and enjoyment for it, but felt so called to the local church that was almost in the back burner, never really give any strong consideration to it. When I stepped away, the doors that God didn't open back up was full-time ministry. What God began to open up was marketplace doors. And I just took that next step of obedience, and then it led to the next step,
So really, it was a step-by-step
was.
Walking through doors that you felt God was opening, not having a clue of what in 5, 10, 20. You had to kind of lay that thinking down, didn't you?
I did. And I did all the stuff that, I got some coaching, I got input,
Sure.
I did the pros and cons, I listed all the possible opportunities that would be out there for me. What I did find is there's a lot of skills that I had developed for the last 20 years that serve me well where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. And some of those were picked up in ministry.
Most of them were. Things like communication, being a good communicator, whether that was in a group setting or individually, developing people, the ability to develop people. That's transferable in any setting you go into.
Anywhere.
Building teams. I mean, it's what I spent the last 15 years, 20 years doing, is building teams, right? Whether it be elders, missions teams, small group leaders, whatever it is. And what I found was, organizational leadership, another important one. What I found was the doors that opened to me, I didn't know the industry as well as many that I was around, but I had transferable skills that were easily applied. So I found myself in a role for a season where I was traveling with a primary role of developing agents and agencies all over the Southeast. It's not because I was an expert in the industry. It was because I was an expert with people and developing people. And then that translated, and I was a pretty quick study, I guess, learned the industry as I went along, but knew that piece of it.
It's interesting too. Management and executives, C-level executives, they see that.
Yes.
That, they might think, okay, Brent really doesn't know much about insurance yet, but
Yeah.
but he's got these set of skills,
Sure.
and that's going to mean success.
Yeah.
So it's always fascinating that people who've been around and know how to pick the right leaders for the right positions, they see that.
Yeah. You could develop knowledge. I think what you can't develop is character.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
How hard somebody's going to work.
Right.
Are they going to show up?
Yeah.
Are they going to compete and grind? And when they have a difficult day, are they going to get back up and keep rolling? Yeah. Those things those character traits are harder to develop.
Yeah.
That's developed over a lifetime.
Right.
Information, even some skills can be that stuff can be trained into. And so, so I think it's influenced even how I have raised up and identified people.
So just to give a big picture now of this season that you have been in for now, I'm losing count how many years now.
About 11 years in the marketplace, 11, 12 years, yeah.
Wow. So 11, 12 years in the marketplace, and specifically in the insurance and financial services industry. Yes. And we'll let you talk more about the specifics of what you do today in a moment. But you're basically, God, through step by step, continue to promote you and finally open up the door where you could actually buy your own agency within the broader company of Horace Mann Insurance Company, which incidentally is just an insurance company that has historically focused on educators.
Yes.
Which is also kind of interesting.
Oh, it is.
It was another niche for you.
Yes.
But you had the opportunity to actually buy your own agency. I remember having the discussions with you. You said, Bobby, I've got the opportunity to actually buy an agency. I'm like, what? Brant Lucy buying an insurance agency? I was like trying to fit all this in my mind. But you took the step, the open door, and the Lord has just amazingly blessed that. And now you're building teams and you're expanding into multiple geographical areas, and God has clearly shown his favor for that. So what's it been like for you to kind of having all of the ministry stuff, and even a moment in which you might say, that particular season it didn't end the way I wanted it to end, and then you end up in marketplace, and now God is just blessing you. How have you processed that?
Well, first of all, I think it's worth saying that I still have a love for the local church.
Yes.
That through that experience, I still love the local church, still very involved.
And very involved.
Yeah, serving as an elder in our church, serving on the teaching team, still wherever I'm needed, I'm jumping in and serving. Love the local church.
Yes,
that hasn't changed. I don't feel like my assignment and calling to a local church has changed. The amount of time I give toward it is changed. So I think that's important in my own testimony and journey. And who knows, down the road, it could be back in a place where I have a more significant role. But I'm open to whatever God has in that. The journey into this, it's really been a fun journey. Spent 5 years on the corporate side, and did that with just the training, the traveling. I had responsibility over the state of Tennessee. Living in Virginia, had responsibility over the state of Tennessee for our company for a season. So loved that side of things. But when a door opened for me to be more hands-on, when you're consulting and coaching, you know this more than most. When you're consulting, coaching, you can only impact so much, right? I mean, if you're not hands-on, you can come alongside and say, "Let me point you in that direction," but still.
No, the execution is not in your hands.
No, not at all.
That's right.
So the ability to be in a place where I could have my hands on the wheel and really grow and develop something, to really develop a team, again, was really exciting. The timing of it, God just has this wonderful sense of humor. Timing of it was right in the middle of COVID. What a horrible time to buy a book of business at all. But God blessed it. Even that first year, we had incredible success and just been growing on that ever since. So it's been a really fun journey.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to segue to, Brant. There are a lot of people who struggle with the question of calling. And ultimately, I always try to get back to the discussion of fit, because sometimes we have a sense of calling, but a lot of people confuse a sense of calling to serve God and to be fully devoted and dedicated as a disciple of Jesus. They confuse that with some kind of a vocational role, and they immediately begin to imagine themselves as a traveling evangelist or a famous pastor or whatever it might be. And they can easily make mistakes in choices that they make because they perceive that that's up here. And if I took a job as a computer programmer or a business owner, that's a step or two lower than that. I think that's it's not only is it a misnomer, it's a misconception. And what is the most important is that we fit where God has placed us. And He knows us best. And He knows not only the supernatural abilities He'll give us, but He also knows how we're wired. He knows much better how we're wired than we are and where we fit best. So could you help us to understand, and those who are listening and watching will benefit from this, how would you advise? Now, you've spent time in vocational ministry. Now you're involved in marketplace leadership, even from owning your own company, but you're also a faithful leader in a local church, helping and supporting a local church. So it's like your ministry, if I could say, your ministry itch is still getting scratched.
It is.
And you're fitting in your gifts there, but it's not compromising the fit of serving in marketplace. So how do people make that distinction, and how did you, even in your own mind, settle the issue of marketplace versus career ministry?
So if I go back, well, I'd answer it two ways. If I would go back to my time at ORU, the vision of ORU was Oral Roberts, I think, caught this so early. It's more commonplace now, but his vision was to raise up students that could hear the voice of God and would go to every discipline, every place where his voice is not being heard, which is the medical arena, which is the financial arena, which is the education arena, which is, it's all of it, right? And so I caught that there, that ministry did not have to take place because you were a vocational ministry. Ministry took place every place I went to. Every assignment that God called me to was a mission field of ministry.
So that was a good philosophical and theological foundation for thinking this way.
Yeah, and I think it was part of my wrestling even back then of going into full-time ministry, because I thought everybody should have this call, a sense of call to want to influence and impact the world for Jesus, no matter no matter what assignment they're on.
Right.
The other is the use of the word calling. Sometimes I personally struggle with. Paul said, "Walk worthy of the calling you received." He's not talking about vocational calling. He's talking about calling from darkness into light. Right? He's a calling to God. It's a calling to follow after Jesus. So when we talk about calling, I think the primary calling is just a calling to follow Jesus. It's those early disciples that he said, come follow me. It's that call. It's that call to the feet of Jesus. It's a call to worship. It's a call to prayer. It's a call to evangelism. It's a call to go make disciples. That is the primary call. Out of that, I think there are assignments that God calls us to. Seasons, and those seasons can change. And there was a season where I was involved, where I was spending all my time in ministry, right? From a work related time. There's a season now where I'm serving in the marketplace. Doesn't change my heart, doesn't change my passion, doesn't change my desire to be used by God, doesn't change my impact or influence. It just shifts how I do it, who I'm impacting, what that looks like.
And would you agree that in the church today, and I'm speaking now as a church leader for my years, and haven't really I haven't made that shift over into marketplace as you did. So I've coming at it from one angle, but I know that you'd agree with this from you have kind of that dual perspective. The body of Christ needs successful marketplace leaders.
Absolutely.
For numerous reasons. One being to simply be salt and light. You're able to be salt and light in venues and space today where the local church pastor wouldn't be invited or welcomed. So you have that opportunity. But let's not also minimize the financial aspect of marketplace is a place, whether it be in banking or whether it be in real estate or insurance sales or wherever, finances are more accessible, and God is able to bless marketplace leaders, and then they in turn then bless ministry with how God has blessed them financially. Both of those would be true, wouldn't they?
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
No question. I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
That I can sit in front of people that are never going to walk in a church, but also I have the ability, as God blesses and increases, to fund ministry that I wouldn't have a chance to otherwise.
Yeah. It's an amazing privilege. I'm just wanting us to kind of conclude and wrap up with hopefully some wisdom that we can offer people. So let's just establish a few things about the whole idea of marketplace versus vocational ministry. There are many people today. The bottom line key is what? Hear from God, follow your heart, find where your God ordained fit is.
Yes.
And don't fight it.
Yes.
I find a lot of people out there fighting it. So they're either in ministry and vocational ministry, pastoral or evangelism or outreach, whatever it may be, and they're fighting that in order to start 4 businesses on the side. And so they're divided because of that. Nothing wrong with that if that's what God's called you to do. There are those that are actually doing really well bivocationally, particularly like people who are starting new ministries and planting new churches. They got a business on the side. I have some very dear friends who do this, who are very successful business people, but they're pastoring a local church, and they develop a team to carry the weight of that so that they can do marketplace ministry. So bivocational ministry is a very valid and many times necessary aspect of balancing those things. And then, of course, there are those who, like yourself now, who have a heart for ministry, but you spend most of your time day to day doing marketplace work, and God's blessing it. It's just, I think being able to have a balanced, holistic view of those things and the tension points is really important. There are a lot of people that get hung up on that. So what would your primary advice be to people in those roles?
And just to be transparent, I wrestle with it at times. I want to be more involved in the local church.
Because of your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. So that tension is real and valid and important. It's good. So I wouldn't minimize that. I think, number one, I've always prioritized my family, the health of my family. And so that we haven't talked about that necessarily and don't have time, but I think that is important. The health of my family and the well-being of my family, that's my first call.
It's non-negotiable.
To them. Second, it is a place of, if I go back and say anything to my younger self, it would be that God's going to order my steps. There's a place of trusting Him with not just provision, but also fulfillment and putting me in places where I can have great impact and great influence. I think just trusting God with the process, recognizing my journey is not like anybody else, so we can learn from each other, but our journeys are very different, right? God has me on my own journey, and I need to trust Him in that process, and I need to be reminded of that often. Because there's so many times I could get anxious, so many times I could wrestle, so many times I begin to look and say, oh, wouldn't it be great if? I need to trust Him in that process daily. It is probably the biggest thing. God wired you, right? God uniquely made you while you were still in the womb. And so He's got the fit and fits for you. He's got the assignments for you.
Yeah.
There's a place of just resting in that.
And I know that you've realized this as I do constantly, and that's that I found comparing yourself to someone else's journey is not healthy.
No.
Because they're all unique.
They are.
It's a God thing.
Yes.
So whenever I look at someone else's journey, I say, I wish I had that.
Sure.
Well, it's just not going to work that way.
No.
And that's not a good attitude to walk with.
No, reality is if you did it, then you wouldn't be happy with it because it's not the right fit, right?
You would not have the same success.
Yes.
No, exactly. So, Brent, we need to wrap up, and I appreciate so much just being able to do a broad strokes on your life story, and you're continuing to build that, following that journey and build your testimony. You're doing a wonderful job of doing that. In addition to how you're serving God in so many different ways in business and all, I'm delighted to say that you and your company have also been willing to be one of our sponsoring partners here in Learning to Lead podcast. And, there's expenses involved in doing podcasts these days, or doing them right. And y'all have been such a blessing to us. And I thought it'd just be easier than me reading your credentials and reading what a wonderful job you do. If you don't mind, just talk right into the camera there and tell everybody about what Brant Lucy Agency with Horace Mann Insurance Companies can do for people on a practical level.
I appreciate that opportunity. So the biggest thing we do is we help strengthen financial households. And so that includes individual lines of insurance, home, auto, life insurance. Certainly we can help on the company side as well as the individual side. And then we have a whole suite of retirement investment products. So really our goal at the end of the day is make sure your financial house is healthy. There's a good foundation, walls are being built, and there's a plan toward retirement.
Yeah, boy. Now that's briefer than I usually do. I usually go on and on and on about you. So you're going to see on the screen, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, the phone number for Brant Lucy Agency. And let me tell you what they'll do. They'll provide a free private consultation with you if you have any needs in the insurance area. And the fact of the matter is, insurance impacts all of us, or should. And whether it be insuring your car, your home, or whether it has to be with some retirement issues. Brent's company has wonderful people on his team, and they'll do so with integrity and with a personalized touch. So I encourage you, give them a call today, and they'll follow up with you. Brent, thank you for your transparency. Thank you for your honesty about learning lessons that God has set in front of us. We pray that God will continue his blessings on you and Kelly, your family, your business. Keep up the wonderful work.
Amen. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
God bless you, and make sure you join us next time. Subscribe and like Learning to Lead. See you next time. Thank you so much for joining Learning to Lead today. I want to share with you some important information before we close about one of our sponsors. Do you need a handyman in your home that you can really trust and that is not crazy expensive? I've got your solution. Call Chosen Helpers Handy Services. It's a company that is a new company. It's run by a wonderful couple, Christian couple, and they would love to help you in your time of need. I'm the kind of guy that always needs it at my house. I'm just not a handyman kind of a guy, and being able to call Chosen Helpers has helped me out many times. They can provide you wonderful support for things like minor plumbing problems, electrical work, home upgrades, small paint and flooring jobs. Those are their specialties. Give them a call today, mention the name Vanguard, and they'll give you a 5% discount on the cost. Here's the phone number. Take it down. 757-788-4211. That's 757-788-4211. You have a home need? You need some repair work done? Give Chosen Helpers a call today.
Thanks for tuning in to Learning to Lead. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow Dr. Bobby Hill on social media for more inspiration, insights, and updates. For more information on his ministry roles and resources, visit drbobbyhill.com.